For latest updates, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon.
Terms and conditions of the Air Waybill. This presentation is a tutorial prepared by JBS Academy to help users learn the nuances of preparing an Air Waybill. These are general guidelines and specific details that may vary due to geographical or legal requirements. In this video, the terms and conditions appearing on the Air Waybill will be discussed in detail. In case of a problem, please refer to the original rules which are given on the Air Waybill against which the shipment has been affected. This is to be done since different companies may have some rules at a variance. Following are the standard conditions of the Air Waybill. Notice appearing on the face of the Air Waybill. The parties agree that the goods have been accepted in a good condition for carriage. Unless they agree to above given agreement by the contrary, based on the conditions, all goods may be carried by other means unless specific instructions have been mentioned. The shipper must also clearly agree that the shipment may be carried through intermediate stopping places that the carrier feels are appropriate. Conditions of contract of the Air Waybill. Notice concerning carrier's limitation of liability. The Montreal or Warsaw Convention is applied to the liability if there is any loss, damage, and delay to the cargo. According to the conventions, these liability limitations will be mentioned as forth in subparagraph 5 until a higher value has been declared for the liability. Conditions of contract. In this contract and the notice appearing hereon, the following must be remembered. Carrier includes the air carrier issuing this Air Waybill and all carriers that carry or undertake to carry the cargo or perform any other service related to such carriage. Special drawing right or SDR is defined by the International Monetary Fund. Warsaw Convention means whichever of the following instrument applies to the contract of carriage. The Convention for the Unification of Certain Rules Relating to International Carriage by Air, signed at Warsaw on 12th October 1929. The Convention as amended at The Hague at 28th September 1956. The Convention as amended at The Hague 1955 and by Montreal Protocol numbers 1, 2 or 4 in 1975 as the case may be. Montreal Convention means the Convention for the Unification of Certain Rules for International Carriage by Air, established in Montreal on 26 May 1999. A carriage has to follow the rules related to liability laid down by the Warsaw Convention or the Montreal Convention unless such carriage is not international carriage as explained under these conventions. Carriages and other related services are subject to the applicable laws and government regulations as long as they don't clash with the conventions. The services performed by each carrier are subject to applicable laws and government regulations, the carrier's conditions of carriage, related rules and regulations, timetables without the specific times of departure and arrival, and the applicable tariffs that have been included and which may be inspected at airports of cargo sales offices from which it operates regular services. When carriage is to or from the USA, the shipper and the consignee receive a free copy of the carrier's conditions of carriage if they request it. The carrier's condition of carriage include but are not limited to limits on the carrier's liability for loss, damage or delay of goods which includes fragile or perishable goods. Claim restrictions include time periods within which shippers or consignees must bring an action against the carrier for its acts or omissions, or acts and omissions of its agents. Right of the carrier, if there are any, to change the terms of the contract. Rules about carrier's right to refuse to carry. rights of the carrier and limitations concerning delay or failure to perform services, which include schedule changes, the substitution of an alternate carrier, or aircraft and rerouting. The agreed stopping places have been defined as those places, except the place of departure and the place of destination, which show as scheduled stopping places for the route as set or shown in the carrier's timetable. These may be altered in case of an emergency. Carriage is to be performed in this by several successive carriers is regarded as a single operation. Carrier's liability limitation for cargo lost, damaged or delayed shall be 19 SDRs per kilogram for carriage, to which the Montreal Convention does not apply unless a greater per kilogram monetary limit is provided in any applicable convention or in a carrier's tariff or general conditions of carriage. The shipper guarantees payment of all charges for the carriage due in terms of carrier's tariff, conditions of carriage, and related regulations, applicable laws, including national laws implementing the Warsaw Convention and the Montreal Convention, government regulations, orders, and requirements. This is valid until the carrier has extended credit to the consignee without the written consent of the shipper. When no part of the consignment is delivered, a claim will be considered even if the transportation charges are unpaid. The Warsaw Convention and Montreal Convention permits the shippers to increase the limitation of liability by declaring a higher value for the carriage and by paying a supplement of charge if required when cargo is accepted for carriage. In carriage to which neither the Warsaw Convention nor the Montreal Convention applies, the carrier shall, by the procedures in its general conditions of carriage and applicable tariffs, permit shippers to increase the limitation of liability by declaring a higher value for carriage and by paying a supplemental charge if so required. In case of loss of, damage or delay to any part of the cargo, the weight in determining the carrier's limit of liability will be the weight that is used to determine the charge for the carriage on such shipments. Notwithstanding any other provisions for foreign air transport as defined by the U.S. Transportation Code. In case of loss of, damage or delay to any part of the cargo, the weight to be taken into account in determining the carrier's limit of liability shall be the weight which is used to determine the charge for carriage of such shipment. And, in case of loss of, damage or delay to any part of a shipment, the shipment weight in above statement shall be attributed to the packages covered by the same bill whose value is affected. The weight applicable in the case of loss or damage to one or more articles in a package shall be the weight of the entire package. Any exclusion or limitation of liability applies to all the carriers and any person's agents, employees, and representatives whose aircraft or equipment is used by the carrier. Where applicable laws, tariffs, and government regulations are permitted, the carrier must use alternative carriers, aircrafts, or modes of transportation without notice but with due regard to the interest of the shipper. The shipper authorizes the carrier to select the routing and intermediate stopping places. To prove that the cargo has been delivered in good condition and has followed the contract of carriage, the receipt by the person entitled delivery of the cargo without complaint is provided as the applicable proof. In the case of loss of, damage or delay to cargo, a written complaint must be made to the carrier by the person entitled to delivery. In case of damage to the cargo, immediately after discovery of the damage, at the latest within 14 days from the date of receipt of the cargo, a complaint must be made. In case of delay, within 21 days from the date on which the cargo was placed at the disposal of the person entitled to delivery, a complaint must be made. In case of non-delivery of the cargo, the time period to place a complaint is within 120 days from the date of issue of the Air Waybill. If an airway bill has not been issued, the time period to place a complaint is within 120 days from the pickup of the cargo for transportation by the carrier. The complaint must be made to the carrier whose airway bill was used, the first carrier, the last carrier, or to the carrier who performed the carriage during which the loss, damage, or delay took place. Unless a written complaint is made within the time limit specified in above statement, no action may be brought against the carrier. For damages to a carrier, action must be brought within 2 years from the date of arrival at the destination, from the date on which the aircraft ought to have arrived on, or from the date on which the carriage had stopped. The shipper must comply with all applicable laws and government regulations of any country to or from which the cargo may be carried, and shall furnish such information and attach such documents to the airway bill as asked under the law. The carrier is not liable to the shipper, and the shipper shall indemnify the carrier for loss or expense due to the shipper's failure to comply with this provision. No agent, employee, or representative of carrier has authority to alter, modify, or waive any provisions of this contract. This presentation is a tutorial prepared by JBS Academy to help users learn the nuances of preparing an airway bill. These are general guidelines and specific details that may vary due to geographical or legal requirements.
For detailed learning on all logistics subjects, visit www.logivator.com.